All right, I just hit record.
Wait a second. Let me grab coffee.
Okay, so today we're back on our regularly scheduled programming. And also we have our very, very first guest on. So we are incredibly excited. Em, do you want to do intros for Renee?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was really only one human that we could welcome on this pod, and her name is Renee Barone Brooks, and she's here with us today. I have to tell you a fun little story about our meeting, Jenna, but she's sort of a jack of all trades. She rose through the ranks in big agency culture in New York to Chicago. We ended up all three of us, intercepting at Weber Shandwick in Chicago, which is a leading CPG agency, global recognition. She then made her way to Praytell agency, which is gangbusters. What they have been doing is so impressive over the years, especially for a young rising star agency. They've been in operation for about 14 years, and the accounts that they have are massive. So kudos to them. Over there, she wears many titles. She's a senior vice president. She's the Vibe and Dine lead. That is actually my favorite title that she wears. She leads the integrated communications department, and she's the manager of the Chicago office. So she, again, is a jack of all trades. You know, my good story about Renee is that Facebook knew we were to be friends long before I did. We were actually introduced by a mutual friend in the Chicago office at Weber. And Facebook, meanwhile, was saying, you should really pay attention to this girl. I think you're going to like her. And her profile photo on Facebook was Michelle Monaghan, basically, which is actually truth. She looks like Michelle Monaghan, but prettier. And this girl walks into my life one day on a Mars account, and it was like the story was written. Just the way she has about her is just, you want to spend time with her. So thank you, Facebook. Thank you, Mark, for understanding. I will never doubt the Facebook algorithm again. Anyway, here she is, Renee Brooks.
Wow. Can you guys send me that clip for later? I'm just going to play that every morning when I wake up as my daily
Your digital resume, Renee.
Yeah. You should.
What an intro. I cannot wait to disappoint all your listeners from here on out. Thank you so much, Em, and thank you, Jenna, for having me on. I feel like we all intersected at that time that's trending right now, it being 2016, which feels like
oh my gosh, yes.
fever dream. Just what was that? It was a full ass decade ago. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
That's okay. It's allowed.
But truly, what a time to be alive. But so glad to be your first guest on this podcast. And I just love following what my beautiful friends have been building and doing. I'm constantly texting Emily, oh my God, way to go. I'm your number one LinkedIn commenter for, the 4 times a year I log on to LinkedIn.
And
I make
Instagram.
I appreciate that so much.
That's with you ladies doing your own thing, starting a podcast. I mean, come on, this is amazing.
That's all,
Renee,
Jenna,
we love you. I feel like I could go on about you too, because I was never technically in the Chicago office, but you were one of the very first people to welcome me. I don't even know what account it was or what trip it was, but I remember you welcoming me, taking me out to dinner at one point. And it was at that point that I learned that you are a true savant with food and the Chicago scene. No, I love it. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
So we want to get some of your thoughts and insights today. You're still very much in a similar space to where we are, but it's also nuanced. I think with your experience with food and drink and that whole space, it's just really fun to get your perspectives too. And then, of course, we want to touch on a couple favorite campaigns. One of our favorite campaigns that's happening right now is actually under your purview. So that'll be a fun one to chat about. So I guess let's dive in. Do you want to start by just giving us a little bit of kind of grounding info about what you do at Praytell and what the last several years have looked like in your world?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. What an honor. Okay. My time at Praytell. So when I joined Praytell, we were probably 5, 6, 7 years old, somewhere in that range, like very much still in like heavy entrepreneurial startup mode, which was so attractive to me. Coming from big agency and just having a lot of teams, big teams, some red tape involved in that, I was really excited about the prospect of being able to just like do things on my own. And I'll never forget when I first started. My boss at the time was like, hey, put this deck together and then we're going to share it with the client. And I was like, cool. So when do you want to review and should I build in time for edits? And like, what do you think about this? And he's like, you send it to the client. Like, what do you like? Do I want to review the note? What are you talking about? And I was like, okay, got it. Okay. And so that was really liberating. And I think it was probably like the best thing for me at that time because I was able to grow very quickly. And at that time, we were very much in that like, go fast, break stuff kind of mode. And so we did a lot of that. We came, I think, under notoriety in the PR world, probably for a lot of like our trend jacking or like quick moving campaigns. And so in the time that I've been at Praytell, it's been very cool to watch us grow and scale that enthusiasm across the board. So we're more than double what we were before. We've expanded our offices. I was primarily brought on in Chicago to help grow the Chicago market. So when we started, we were operating out of a WeWork. There were 6 of us in there. We expanded to like another office space. So we like doubled in size, but we're talking like 1,200 square feet. And then Andy was like, we got to get a real office here. So I took one of the many times that I had a new hat on corporate real estate developer.
I remember that, Renee.
Just whatever
And she
you,
did it well.
this is what it's like. It's like, don't ask who's going to do it because it's you. So went and found our space where we are now at Hubbard and May. So from that tiny WeWork office to 4,500 square feet, a beautiful office. I actually got to design the office with a designer, which was like really, really fun.
Cute.
Yeah, I'm telling you, just like, let's do it. And then with the support, obviously, of Andy and Beth and Project, we built out the office space, and that is where we are today. And at that time, we had put, I think, 28 desks in, and there was probably like 12 people. And I was like, oh, maybe one day we'll fill up this whole place. And now it's like, we're clamoring for desk space.
Wow.
We're almost at 30 people. The office has now expanded to our project network. So sorry, I'm getting off track here about what I do, but that is definitely part of the story. So as we have continued to grow, about 3 or 4 years ago, we realized that we were finding a concentration in business in terms of alcohol and food and beverage alongside some other specialties, whether that's a consumer practice where we have a lot of health and wellness and beauty clients, whether that's a sports and entertainment. And so we started breaking out into practices. And that's where I took on alongside with my wonderful counterpart, Sarah Zant, you guys would love her, to take on Imbibe and Dine. And so we built out several different practice areas, which I think for us coming from big agency, it's like, wow, like good job. You guys have-
Yes.
But for us, it was the first kind of cards and like an organizing structure, building that. And then last year, we started to break out into larger teams. And so that's where the integrated communications department comes together. And I think much like how everything old is new again, we realized that the intersection between creators and influencers and social and PR and what we're doing all have more connective tissue than we think. And so our goal is to really ensure that everyone is well versed in all of those different disciplines, because when you see a trend on social and you make it happen in PR, you also have to have like creators to support it. So it's all very much connected. And that's a big ambition that we have with our integrated communications department that I am, again, co-leading with a wonderful woman, Jamie Simpson, under Caitlin Driscoll and Beth Cleveland, who are visionaries with how we're going to pull it off.
I love that. I think when you left Weber, we were still at Weber, and it was a little bit of a wow moment of you jumping into that space and taking a risk. And it's inspiring, especially for us as entrepreneurs now, to see the growth for Praytell and your growth and where you guys have been in that journey. It's definitely fuel for us as we're looking at where we want to go and what we're doing. So we love it. And also, let's just say it's so nice that our industry supports still having these friendships and, you know what I mean? The reciprocal relationships of great, you're growing. You've been very helpful with us of what can we, how can we help you? And I think that's really nice to see just from like a humanity standpoint. So
We have we have 6 principles of Praytell, and one of them is rising tides raise all ships, because it's true. Like, if there's something that, may not be a fit for us, that could be a fit for you, like we want to see our friends in the industry succeed. It's too small of an industry to be unnecessarily competitive or like mean-spirited. Very much want everyone to survive. And that's another thing that attracted me to the agency, is they also have a philosophy of like no BS. Like, we're just like, truly, it's on a slide, which always causes sometimes pearl clutching.
We'll start.
But it's very much a part of what we try to do.
I love it.
Should we shift into a little bit of the landscape on Imbibe and Dine? So it's interesting, the shift that's happening culturally. It doesn't seem to be a blip on the radar here, Renee.
Yeah.
This shift in attitude towards alcohol and imbibing. Curious, the rise of sober curious, and obviously Praytell has built an entire practice on Imbibe and Dine. What are you seeing out there from that shift? How has it impacted your practice, and what are kind of the nuances to be aware of as you're doing your work day to day?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about 2016 earlier. My friends, it is not 2016.
No.
I always laugh when I'm always like trying to rally the troops. I'm like, let's cut out at like 4:00 and like go have happy hour. And they're like, no, I gotta do yoga later. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I think to your point, like when the trends start to mirror your own experience, you're like, oh, okay, wow, this is not just a blip on the radar. This is really a shift in consumer preferences. And that's really what we've seen with Gen Z. At first, it started off as like a COVID thing where it's like maybe people were just dialing back. There was trying to be a focus on health. And we thought that's probably a blip. Like, people will maybe start to pick up drinking a little bit more as they start going out more, etc. I will say the one exception to that was wine was up during early COVID, because for millennials and Gen Xers and people who were home were like, I'm going to get a bottle of wine and like enjoy the night. But as Gen Z started to become LDA compliant, meaning legal drinking age, we didn't see as much uptick in that. What we are seeing an uptick in is the rise of NA and NA culture. So both from like bespoke products to NA beers. I mean, it's no secret that the NA beer market, in the form of Athletic, in the form of Bureau, one of our clients of years, is another amazing product. Chicago, shout out. They're nationwide, but Chicago. The NA market is booming, and it's clearly here to stay. It's probably the only category of alcohol that's growing at this time. So it's interesting, and you have to find different ways to meet people where they are. I know within the wine industry in particular, and this is not specific to any client industry, there is a feeling of like some of the things that made wine what it is also the things that's working against them. So like having all the varietals is great. And like you can get really niche and really specific, but that's also overwhelming to people. Like, they don't know what to do. Having good wine is great. Like some bottles of wine do taste better to certain people, but that also then brings shame. Am I bringing a bad bottle of wine? Am I going to be embarrassed if I walk in with this wine? And so there's definitely a feeling of like they've created this space which has so many wonderful attributes, but the flip side of that could be the barriers that's actually holding them back. And so it presents a lot of challenges for our clients. How do you talk to a generation that the data would show is not drinking as much as their millennial counterparts, but they are the ones who are setting the tone for culture? They do have spending power. And then how do you also not ignore the people who are actually buying your product right now, which no one likes to talk about Gen X, but like they are the ones who are still drinking.
They are still very much there.
As an older millennial, I'm like, don't forget about Gen X. Okay, they want to be talked to. And so it's balancing all of those different things while simultaneously remembering that our clients are human and they are under a tremendous amount of pressure themselves. So it's industry pressures, internal pressures, cultural sensitivities in terms of like, how do you talk about drinking in a way that doesn't over glorify it, that isn't doing anything, that doesn't adhere to ad code, that isn't going to, I mean, there are obvious, parts of drinking culture that go too far, and it's not something that is a positive thing. But if you were out with us in 2016, there's lots of positive things with drinking culture.
Renee, so many interesting things in there. And we, did a little research on this too, just about NA beer. Wine and spirits actually
Mhm.
surged 26% over the past year
Yep.
to top 800 million in the US market alone. And, you see it with innovations and in legacy categories and whatnot. Do you feel like clients are scrambling on that point to catch up, or do you think they have a decent handle on this?
It depends on the category.
Yeah.
So beer, for the reason that you see it, and I very cautionarily say this, it is not necessarily easier, but it is one of the easier products to make it taste good without alcohol.
Mm.
Wine is hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
hard to do. That is why you do not see a lot of NA wines that people are like raving about. Like when people drink Athletic, they're like, this tastes like beer.
Yeah, love
And
it.
that's amazing. When people drink NA wine, there are some good brands, there are some great people doing it, but like it's just a very, very hard thing. And I would say the same to a degree goes for spirits. So you can't really, I mean, here's the deal. Vodka doesn't taste like anything, right? So like, what is the NA version of vodka? Water? Like it's harder
Yeah.
to mimic those types of things. And so what you're seeing is brands like Seedlip that are coming out with like their own version of a spirit, but it's alcohol free and it has its own unique taste. And so spirits are very interesting in that degree because some people are I'm blanking on the brand, but there's like tequila adjacent NA product that's very, very good that actually uses cayenne to mimic the burn of like tequila when you drink it. And so it gives like the similar sensation of drinking alcohol, but without the alcohol in it. And so people are getting really, really creative. It's definitely an exciting time to be following the space. And if you're interested in that category, there's no shortage of options. It's just there's degrees of difficulty. There's degrees of difficulty manufacturing, all of that stuff. And so you're seeing some big companies doing it, but a lot of them are startups. So if you look at like the major holding companies, aside from a company like Anheuser-Busch that obviously has some NA beer offerings, I'm blanking on one that maybe has like a very strong NA wine or NA spirit right now.
And talk to us a little bit about tariffs. This is something that's obviously been on the radar since a shift in power here. I think it's things we don't think about on an everyday basis as a consumer. And what you had told us prior to jumping on this call is very fascinating for our listeners.
Yeah. So one of the things, I was listening to an industry report and I hadn't actually clocked how big of an impact that the tariffs in Canada were having on U.S. sales of wine and bourbon and whiskey. So when the tariffs went into place, you may remember that the Canadian minister, insert his like formal title, the guy that oversees it,
Guy in Canada.
that was like, this is some bullshit.
Welcome to the pod.
Yeah. that guy. He was like, I'm pulling product from shelves right now. And there were all those clips going around on all the evening news of like them taking bottles off shelf. Now, I think in my mind, I thought, oh, they're going to sell the product and they're not going to reorder it, even though I saw them taking it off shelves. I don't know why I thought that. But what hadn't clocked for me was that when they took them off the shelves, and they are now sitting in a warehouse, which means whoever the producer of that is not getting sales from the product that's there. Yep. They are also not ordering new product. Right. And so you're kind of hit with a double whammy. All the anticipated sales that you had from that market are now gone. They are not going to happen. And then they're not reordering. And so whatever you forecasted, I mean, sure, in that quarter, but then like long term, your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year growth plan is suddenly all called into question because we have no idea how long these tariffs are going to last. Now with this, are they going to have to pay it back? We don't know anything about what's going on. That makes it impossible for a company to plan. So when we think about wine, California and Californian wineries, one of their biggest markets for exporting is Canada. And a lot of the wines that California produces are wines that are meant to be drank immediately. Some can be bottle conditioned, sure, but some are meant to be drank immediately. And I recently saw or was listening on a podcast about how they're now tearing up the vineyards in Napa because it's more work to maintain the vines than it is to just rip them up and potentially start over again. And so it's having this devastating ripple effect across the board. And then there's a major bourbon producer that's no longer going to be producing for this year because they're sitting on inventory. And so you're seeing this ripple effect across industries because of the tariffs. And that's just one market, right? That's just the Canadian market. Worldwide, there's also impacts as well. So it's definitely an interesting time to be in alcohol, both from consumer sentiment changes and preferences to the actual geoeconomic things that are going on. Makes it unlike anything we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, so Em and I have talked on past episodes about the rise of the cannabis industry and drinks like that. I'm wondering if you guys have seen an uptick there in your client base.
Not in our client base necessarily, but definitely an uptick overall within the industry. So here's the thing about the cannabis drinks. It's interesting because it is state-led legislation. And so what is acceptable in one state is not acceptable in another. And so that makes it very challenging, as you guys know, from a PR point of view, especially when some of the requests that we get are, we want everyone talking about our product. It's like, cool, your product is available on the West Coast. And only, and is illegal if you ship it. So that presents a lot of challenges when it comes to trying to drum up excitement and momentum for brands. Obviously, we can do local outreach, but if the expectation is that we're going to get you on the Today Show to talk about your cannabis drink, it's just not going to happen. And so that's a lot of what, from our particular point of view, that we see as a challenge is just the distribution is not built in, but the interest is absolutely there. Consumers are gravitating towards that, and also some functional mushroom beverages as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Which I actually haven't tried, but I've heard that they're amazing. And again, to the point that we were talking about earlier about Gen Z and their preferences. So they may not drink alcohol, but they may drink a THC or CBD drink. They may drink a functional mushroom drink. It seems, I don't know if like them being sober is necessarily the goal. It's just maybe abstaining from alcohol seems to be more what their preferences are. And it's worth saying there's plenty of Gen Z that drink too. A lot of people will tell you within the industry that when they're talking about Gen Z, they are not factoring in they're looking at Gen Z overall. They're not looking at specifically LDA compliant Gen Z and extrapolating that data. So it's worth noting, but I think by and large, just again, focus group of one here. I see it all the time with the wonderful Gen Z colleagues that I work with.
Yeah.
Alcohol does not have the same role in their life than like it did when I was 23.
And that it did in 2016 for us. Yes.
Right.
Exactly. When I was 23 in 2016.
Yes. Okay, let's do a shift real quick because I know talked a bunch about alcohol and where that's going, but you don't just lead that area. One of our favorite campaigns that we've seen recently, I actually just flagged it to a client today because it's relevant to something they're doing, but the Burger King campaign.
Yeah.
Can you chat a little bit about that journey? Because I know that's a recent program for you.
Yeah.
Fill us in.
Yeah. This was one of the coolest things. I just returned from mat leave, and one of my first new teams that I'm joining is the Burger King team. And so they briefed me on this project, and I was like, wait, this is incredible. Hold on. He's really going to take calls from consumers. So to back up, the Burger King campaign is Tom Curtis, the president of Burger King, is embarking on a listening tour to be able to hear directly from consumers about what they need to be doing better. Burger King has been listening to consumers with real intention for the last couple of years. They actually have a very cool Whopper by You program, which is where we hear guest suggestions about what they want their Whoppers to be and then create Whoppers from people by you, which is a very, very cool thing. And then this is just kind of like the next iteration of that. So Tom Curtis put out his cell phone number and had people calling him and can continue to call him. I don't know when this podcast is going live, but the line is going to be open where you can call. Tom will call you back and you can have a real live conversation with the president of Burger King. And it's all real. Tom is truly trying to get to as many calls as possible. I can't disclose the total amount, but when I tell you the volume is insane, it's absolutely insane. And he is genuinely one of like the most amazing leaders that I've had the pleasure of being, I don't want to say in contact, but like watching, because he genuinely wants to get to as many calls as he can.
Yeah.
Like he's having an amazing time talking to consumers. Tom has like a very interesting background. He comes from Domino's. He owned a franchise. So like that's kind of like his role. He loves connecting with people. He loves talking with them and hearing about what they can do better. And so he's been taking calls for the last 2 weeks and has been hearing so many interesting pieces of feedback. I don't know if you guys follow him on LinkedIn too, but like he'll even have people on LinkedIn say, "Oh, I want this," and he's like, "Yeah, text me, call me, like let's talk about it." And just
It is
truly
a real
putting
Miami 305 number.
yeah, where RBI is located.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it because very simply, it plays into the brand proposition, have it your way. It's always been there.
Yep.
It is not a stretch. It is just taking it to a next level that actually breaks through in culture. It shows he cares, that he is going to glean a lot of insight from these conversations as well. I just think it's genius.
absolutely. There's a whole other layer to that too, around the idea that the consumer rules, right? That's their tagline at the end, you rule. And it's so important to really follow through on that brand promise, because they do want to make products better. They do want to get people in. They've acknowledged, that the standards have not always been where they want them to be. And so it's been a very refreshing campaign to work on, to be able to tell a story that is just a genuinely great story, not have to do what we do so well, which is put our PR spin on it. This one just kind of writes, right? Like it's just kind of, the headlines write themselves. I mean, he's putting himself out there and it's earnest and it's real. And it's going to be one for the books when I look back at this career.
I think the cool thing about it too is it's customer centricity at its finest, because a lot of companies talk about being customer centric and taking input from customers, and they do, right? I mean, almost every company that you're buying something from, you can call their line, you can give them feedback. Somebody's taking that feedback, but it's actioning that customer feedback and really being transparent about that. What's not talked about in a campaign like this is the work that needs to go into making these changes. So when I was reading something about it, I think there was something about the Whopper is now going to be served in a box, right?
Yeah.
And that seems so basic from a customer perspective. It is not. I mean, you're talking about impacting your whole supply chain, your quality standards. Every single franchise has to follow suit. That's a big change. And it seems so small and easy and like, okay, cool, check the box. So I think it's worth acknowledging that not only is the president taking however many hundreds of hours of his time to hear these, but they're using the feedback to inform business changes and serve the customer better. I have no idea what it's in terms of cost, what that means, but it's a big thing to acknowledge. And I think it really is, it's a testament to really kind of putting your money where your mouth is, right? And saying, if we want to serve the customers, if the customers rule, we're going to make these changes for them. So it's huge.
It's huge. Jenna, do you want to come on the Burger King team? You just, I don't have anything to add. I mean, you summarize that so beautifully. Yeah, it truly is just, again, following through on like their value proposition. And it's a real belief. Like if you talk to people who work at Burger King, I mean, they are so intent on making sure that the guest has the best experience possible. From to your point about it's an industry term, but it's called clamshell box.
There we go. There you go.
I love those. Apparently I love those, and I never knew.
They got feedback that like when you put your Whopper in the bag, when it was wrapped, it would get smashed. And so they don't want to have a smashed burger experience for people. So they put it now in this box. But to your point, Jenna, they've got to roll that out everywhere.
And
Simple feat.
crazy. And it's not just, hey, put it in a box. It's a whole new way of assembling. It's a whole new way. And you've got to make sure that every single employee from every single shift knows it. And so it's a lot. And they, the Burger King team does, and I'm not on this team. I don't know how they do it, but they do it so well to make sure that all the franchisees and everybody is set up for success. But it's an amazing undertaking.
I have so many questions that I would love to ask them. I mean, something like that, so simple, could take years to change. So, and it seems like they're moving at an expedited pace. So it's really cool and impressive. So
I agree.
Okay, I'm conscious of time and we appreciate you giving us so much of your time. One of the things that we always ask ourselves at the end of every call is, what's our impact? It is kind of true to the ethos of WOI, and it's something we really focus on. So before Em and I answer that this week, we want to ask you, what's your impact for this week?
Okay. Well, we are reading, or in my case, listening to an audiobook of Radical Candor, which is a great book. I don't know if you guys have read it or listened. It's very cool. It's about the art of being a boss, giving feedback, all of those things. But one of the things that the author notes is sometimes being the boss is just listening and having questions about someone's personal life or just hearing them about their personal life. And so this week, I feel like my impact has been just continuing to formulate like those great one-on-one relationships that I have with people, both at the top. Like, I recognize I'm in a more senior position, but like I've got great relationships and had so many wonderful conversations this week with the most junior members on our team, get to hearing about their life, what they're doing this weekend, how they're going to spend their time. And just, I think my impact is being accessible in a way that makes people feel seen and heard. And I genuinely enjoy it. And hopefully that telegraphs to them. But, I remember what it was like when a boss showed any interest in me. And so I always try to remember that when I'm connecting with some of the more junior Gen Z folks.
Renee, it seems to come full circle from how you got your first job too in New York.
Honestly, I had not even, it probably does. We were talking before about my core first boss at my internship casually said, "You did great. Like, would love to keep in touch." And I took that as a job offer. And then for a solid calendar year, my senior year of college, and just was harassing this man for a formal job offer, which I did get. So it did work. But
and you still have a relationship with him today.
Yes,
so there you go. There you go.
While you were rolling Tide, I might add Renee, which is huge.
People matter.
Anything else? All right, Jenna. Well, how about ours this week?
Yeah. Okay. So I love, Renee, that yours was kind of on the more personal side, and Em and I oscillate a little bit between personal, professional. This week, I would say collectively, our impact was fueling our business. Sometimes as a business and, as entrepreneurs, sometimes your time is spent strictly on client work and just delivering the best that we can absolutely deliver. And then other times we take a beat and say, oh gosh, we have to do our own business. We have to do the PR and branding and marketing for our own business. And this week was a big week for us in terms of RFPs and just branding WOI more and working through some of that stuff. We've had some exciting updates and changing and progress. So I think our impact was really on the WOI brand for the most part this week. What would you say?
Self-reflection for sure. Yeah. And it feels good to get some stuff done in that camp for sure. And I think it parlays here too, Renee, having our first guest. It adds a lot. I think it's really a big part of what we want to convey as part of this communicate to the world. So we just thank you for being a part of this.
Oh my gosh, you guys, pleasure. Should I just be like a rotating co-host on this?
I would love that. Love that.
What a joy. Easiest
meeting of the day.
Yeah.
All right, Renee. Well, thank you so much for joining us as our very first guest. We loved catching up with you, hearing everything that you've been up to in the industry, and happy as always to just get some time with you. So thank you.
Same. So good to see you gals. Love watching you. You're doing amazing things. I cannot believe that you are just like business owners and doing the thing. It's so good. Can't wait to like and respond to all of your LinkedIn posts. And it was great to see you.